Welcome back to Keyword Video at WMMBAM.com as we get you ready for this primary election season. Today, our guest, Tres Holton, Republican in the House District 53 race. Trey, thanks for taking the time. Glad you're here. Let's talk about what got you into this campaign. What made you decide this is the House seat, this is the time to run?
It was towards the end of session. We had already gone through reapportionment. As you know, every 10 years there's a census, and after the census, they redraw the district boundaries. When the district boundaries were drawn, they were drawn utilizing something called fair districts. If you remember, that was a constitutional amendment that basically said that communities of interest should be kept together,
compact, contiguous.
Yes, sir. And you shouldn't draw districts, to
benefit anybody,
to benefit an incumbent. And this particular district was an open seat. It is an open seat. There is no incumbent currently living in this district. There is a state representative who is running in this race against me. Doesn't currently live in the district, which is a loophole.
And to Tres Holton, to John Tobias and Rich Workman's credit, when that redistricting was done and when that was worked on, they actually put themselves against each other if they were going to stay where they're living to run. So, again, they followed the will of the voters, and I was glad to see that happen.
Yes, but with the district being open, I actually did have a conversation with Mr. Tobias on multiple occasions, expressing that the district did look very appealing for somebody from South Brevard who has roots there, who is part of that community, who is representative of that community. And I had both that conversation with him and some others, and he encouraged me to run for this seat, Bill. He actually encouraged me to run for it. I have witnesses to that, by the way. And so we did. And I had to give up my position in the Senate as a legislative aide in order to seek this particular seat. We started campaigning extremely hard, and it became bigger than myself and bigger. My wife obviously is she's the genius behind most of our campaign, but we got a lot of volunteers. We got a lot of people out there involved. And then right before qualifying, I found out that Mr. Tobias was going to run. And that was extremely disappointing to us. However, certainly people should have a choice. Elections are about choices. And, we have actually 3 people in this race. I am the only resident, by the way. And one of the reasons why I wanted to run is because we have not, for example, with Palm Bay. Palm Bay's never, ever had a representative resident in Tallahassee. It's never happened. We incorporated January 1960, and in those 52 years, there's never been a current longtime resident of Palm Bay serving the legislature.
Well, as you noted earlier, it's the largest city in the county. That's kind of interesting that's never happened.
And believe you me, that doesn't mean I'm going to, neglect any other part of this district. I have 18 members of my family, Bill, that live in this district. 18 members of my family. And blood is thicker than water. You don't have to worry about outside interests with me or 1 or 2 lobbyists. Blood is thicker than water. I've got members of my family that live in Malabar, West Melbourne, all over the district. And but specifically, one of the things that really attracted me was the fact that Palm Bay had never really had a voice up in Tallahassee, especially.
Well, as you noted in your comments, you've got some experience in and around Tallahassee. Can be tough for a new legislator to go in and be effective. Usually there's a learning curve involved. I've seen it happen with several of our representatives we sent there. It's one of the reasons term limits not necessarily a good idea in my book, but they're there. We have to live with them. When you get to Tallahassee, given the experience that you've had up there in and around the process, where are your allies? Who are they when you get into that process?
Well, let me first address the experience question. Last legislative session, and again, this isn't something I'm making up, it's public record. If you go in to myfloridahouse.gov and you pull up the last legislative session, you'll see that my strongest opponent, which is Mr. Tobias, he didn't file a single bill. 0 bills. Now, you would think if as a libertarian, well, hey, that's probably pretty good. You probably shouldn't file any bills. But Bill, we have what are called repealer bills as well. And this is where you take bad laws off the books.
You can only file 6 new laws. You can repeal as many as you like.
And last legislative session, I presented bills in committee as part of my job. So, technically, I guess I had more experience, presenting bills in the last session than even my strongest opponent. So I believe I'll hit the ground running. And as far as building allies and friendships, excuse me, I got a call. The cough button does work, Bill.
Yes, it
very
does.
Good,
Yeah.
very good.
That's thanks to our engineer, Andy McDonald, who's running the video. So if you make him mad, he's going to scramble your face. But go ahead.
I have some strong relationships with members of our delegation and people from around the state. I started with the Young Republicans 10 years ago.
Okay. I want specifics. Who are your allies in Tallahassee when you go?
Well, I think if you ask any member of our current delegation, they would say that we have a good working relationship. That includes, Senator Altman, Representative Workman, Representative Christopher, Representative Goodson. I've had a strong working relationship and a friendship with many of them. We're all friends, I guess you could say. And I've got friends from around the state, again, going back to when I was involved with the Young Republicans. And a lot of them have moved up the ladder, and they've seeked public office.
Who are those names we would recognize?
Well, you probably wouldn't recognize some of them specifically because, again, they're from around the state of Florida. But one of them, for example, Eric Eisenhower, I think he's on his way out. He's going to be retiring. But I'm building relationships also with people that are coming in this particular cycle because that's very important. We run in classes, much like if you think of high school. Mm-hmm. And, the people that are currently running, I'm building strong relationships with some of those folks, too.
Let's talk for just a few minutes about priorities as you go to Tallahassee if you get this job. Now, you get through this primary, there is a Democrat opponent that is to be determined.
Yes,
strangely, neither of them would show up here to talk, and one of them used to be the mayor of your fair city and is not a stranger to these microphones. I'm a little surprised Ed Geyer didn't show. Don't know his opponent from Adam, and don't know how that's going to come out. But you've got a Democrat opponent, which could be interesting in this district because there's a significant Democrat population in that area.
Well, and I'm glad you point that out. This is a 38-37 one-point race as far as R&D. Now, fortunately, the independents or MPAs, they tend to vote conservative. That's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But yes, a Democrat could be viable in this race. And I think that's one of the things that the voters need to understand and why I believe I'm best suited to go to the general election and keep this seat Republican. Because I've won a citywide election. The city of Palm Bay is the majority share of this district, and I'm the only candidate in this race that's actually won citywide. One of my opponents has won some portions of the city, but I'm the only candidate that's actually carried the city. And both of my opponents have some strong ties in the city of Palm Bay. One is the former mayor. The other is a current Palm Bay resident and teacher. So it's going to be a tough general election, and I believe I'm best suited to actually keep this seat Republican. Unfortunately, all three of us running in the Republican GOP primary, all three of us are conservative. We're certainly, all three of us, much more conservative than the Democrats that are running. But I believe that I'm best suited to actually keep this seat Republican in November.
All right, now let's talk about priorities. If you are elected to this job, what will they be? And what will the district see maybe differently than they're seeing now?
The economy, jobs, obviously are going to be a key priority for myself and for the legislature in the upcoming session. We've got to make sure that we reduce. For example, we want to reduce our corporate income tax. We need to do that. We need to make our state very attractive to corporations, not just in the United States but from around the world. And so I'm going to be strongly working on trying to reduce that corporate income tax. Different ways to do that. You can go to my website, which is www.holton.org, and read some of our policy papers, where we stand on the economy. I'm a laissez-faire, Milton Friedman type person when it comes to the economy. I think if we could just get government out of the way and let the private sector grow, I think that's the best plan of action that we can have in the legislature. So obviously the jobs and the economy is going to be a priority. Education, it will continue to be a priority. Healthcare is going to continue to be a priority. I'm not going to support the expansion of Medicaid here in the state of Florida and throwing in 2 million new people into the rolls. Bill, I was a medic in the Army, and I will tell you, I will always prefer quality over quantity, and I'm very concerned about what kind of impact that would have. So I'm going to stand with our governor and with our legislative leaders, and I'm not going to support the expansion of Medicaid tax rolls.
Talk about getting government out of the way. Let's talk for a minute about economic development zones, or CRAs if you're in a city. Those are regulated by law at the state level. We've seen abuses, we've seen downright fraud, and we've seen cities get into trouble trying to correct those problems. We see counties grabbing for these things. This county grabbing for them right and left. Give me your philosophy on those and what kind of changes need to be made, if any.
I'm sorry, repeat. I didn't hear the one.
What's your philosophy on CRAs and economic development zones, and what changes need to be made?
Obviously the way those are executed is a local thing because they create their own boards. Let's say you're a city or a county. And the purpose of those, in my opinion, are more designated towards micro levels. You have a small area that is blighted, for example, and you want to improve that area by allowing the private sector to do certain things and get incentives, and the money stays in that district. I have some really serious concerns about what's going on here in Brevard County, especially in the north part of the county with that enterprise zone that was created. Again, those type of incentives are really designed for micro levels, because one of my concerns is that we're going to end up subsidizing the north part of the county, with that type of an enterprise or whatever they're calling it zone.
Economic development, that kind of thing.
Right.
Another issue that we've seen, residents of Palm Bay fighting, the state mandate on these septic systems that require the inspections and the contracts and those something the state shouldn't be into. Who in the septic tank business got into the legislators' pockets and got this law put in play, and would you advocate changing that?
Well, again, it's typical government. With one broad brush, they passed a law that really they shouldn't have done. I knew what was the impetus, what started that discussion on whether we should have those inspections had to do with a small part of the state of Florida that has very porous sand, and some of the leaching may have went down into the aquifer. And what did government do? Just, you start one thing, and next thing you know, everybody piles on, and you ended up with a statewide mandate, and that is absurd. And I'm glad that basically that law is basically null and void.
There are still there are still elements that are in play.
Yes, sir, there is, and I would support repealing them if that's the question. I would support repealing those.
We are out of time. Tell this audience what you need them to know in our last 30 seconds or so.
Well, Again, I think it's extremely important that someone go to Tallahassee that is part of this community, that that's a current resident, that's a longtime resident, that works in the district, that plays in the district, that worships in the district, that sends their kids to school in the district. These are my neighbors, and I think that we need a local voice in Tallahassee. That's extremely important, and I encourage your listeners to contact me personally if they have any questions or concerns.
All right, very good. Website again?
www.holton.org.
Holton, HOLTON.org.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Trey Holton, thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Bill.
Appreciate you guys being here. Keyword video at WMMBAM.com. We'll see you back here soon.